Please note that this content is for adults only. Viewer discretion advised. If you haven't yet, hit the subscribe, like, and share. On February 15th of 2020, a man named Michael Hernan woke up in the middle of the night, well, it was around 1 a.m., to the sounds of a violent struggle happening in the home where he was renting a room, and this was on Mound Street in Hollywood Hills. You could hear something was going on upstairs. He recalled waking up early in the night and hearing the sound of either like a plate breaking or glass breaking, but he thought it was his roommate coming home from a night out with her friends, and maybe she dropped something and then went to bed. So he didn't think anything of it at the time, but now, all of this was piecing together because he could hear something bad was happening upstairs. So he got out of bed and he ran to the bottom of that staircase and shouted up, "Amie! Amie!" But there was no response, and he could hear the struggle was still continuing. So he dashed out the door, scaled a wall. Literally, his shirt ripped and he injured himself a little bit as he panicked and ran out, and knocked on neighbors' doors, begging them to help. None of them answered the door at the time. Of course, it was very early in the morning or very late at night, however you look at it. And eventually, he ran into a neighbor who was out on a late night walk. And he said, "Please, can I use your phone?" And he used that neighbor's phone and he called 911 and he said, "Please come and help. My friend is being attacked. I need your help now." The police eventually arrived. They first got lost a little bit. That's what we found out at the trial. But anyway, they did a couple of loops. They came to the scene and they looked at this guy, Michael, and they were like, "What's up with this guy?" Like, he was wide-eyed. His heart was pounding. His shirt was ripped. It just looked odd to them, which is unfortunate now because it took even more time to get to the victim inside.
Screaming, she was thrown to the ground. I couldn't find my phone. I couldn't find anything.
Okay, hold on. Okay, so you have access to here?
No.
Is there anybody else inside the house?
My roommate.
Just your roommate by yourself?
Yes. You didn't check on her? Dude, I heard screaming. I don't know if that guy had a gun or a knife. I came running I couldn't find my phone or
So anything. Is there somebody else inside?
Yes. So I think there's
Okay, sir, do me a favor. Do me a favor. Calm down. Calm down. Other than your roommate, is there anybody else inside the house?
I don't know.
So you didn't see anyone?
No, I just heard her screaming.
Have you called?
I got thrown to the ground. I've been calling for her. There's windows, nobody's answering, nothing.
Anyway, eventually, when they got into the property, Dr. Amie Harwick, was lying on the ground in the courtyard, and it looked like she'd fallen about 20 feet from her own bedroom balcony. So she was on the floor, unconscious, unable to talk, but still breathing. So the paramedics arrived, they assessed the situation. Eventually, Amie was put on a gurney and taken to the hospital. Sadly, she died from her injuries later that night at around 3 in the morning. And her attacker was nowhere to be found. There were signs of a struggle. She had DNA under her fingernails. She had the signs of being strangled. And she had apparently, according to police at that time, been thrown off the balcony. But of course, when the killer was caught, his defense team said, well, maybe she jumped off the balcony. Maybe he was just depressed, and he just wanted to talk to her, and she jumped off the balcony, which of course makes no sense. Anyway, so she apparently died from blunt force injuries to her head and torso, as well as being strangled before she was thrown off that balcony. So who would do such a thing to her? It was Valentine's Day, the day before. She had one of the best days. She was out with her girlfriends. She went to a burlesque show. They took lots of pictures. And the last interaction that she had with anyone was getting home, pulling into her driveway and texting her friend, "Send me that picture of us on the green couch." That's the last anyone heard from her. She walked into her home, went upstairs, and then she was brutally attacked by none other than an ex-boyfriend. And by ex, I mean from like 8 years ago. Some whiny baby boy, there's no other way to put it, Some guy who just could not let it go. He felt entitled to her. He was obsessed with her. He was a stalker. And in the 18 months they dated way back then, he was a domestic violence aggressor. He didn't even treat her well. He tried to choke her, suffocate her, slammed her on the floor, slammed her against walls, tried to throw her out of a moving car. This guy was absolutely crazy. The problem is, there's many cases like this. And I find that in sharing cases like this, hopefully, if you do share this with someone you know, or someone who might be in a similar situation or something, hopefully it can save a life. Because there is no amount of empathy that one should ever have for these stalkers, abusers, coercive controllers. Not even a drop. You cannot reason with them. You cannot empathize with them and get through to them. And all contact must be cut off. There must be protective orders, restraining orders, and renew them. Amie Harwick did all of that. She literally had a restraining order against this guy, 2 before. But they expire. In certain states, they expire after a year, sometimes 3 years, sometimes 5 years, depending on where you are in the world, sometimes never. But this restraining order had expired. So what can we learn? Be proactive, renew it. And that's not to victim blame. We're trying to learn from these cases so that we can save lives. So if you feel that this is an important message to share, please like the video and share it. #DV awareness, #stalking, #coercive control. This case is so sadly one of those examples. And Dr. Amie Harwick was absolutely brilliant, beautiful, so smart, had a wonderful network of supportive and loving family and friends. Everybody knew about this guy from 8 years ago and how scared she was of him. They supported her in getting security cameras, pepper spray, tracking her location. She did everything right. And this guy, her ex-boyfriend, which we're going to get into, broke into her home on Valentine's Day that evening, even though he was dating other women, okay? And they were wondering, why doesn't he want to see me on Valentine's Day? No, he broke into his ex-girlfriend's home, lay in wait in her bedroom, with a syringe filled with pure nicotine, which in itself would be fatal. Still don't know what exactly his plan was with that, but okay. And when she got home, brutally attacked her. This is the case of Dr. Amie Harwick. Let's get into it.
We're going to talk about relationship jealousy. It can even lead to violence, or, for example, the O.J. Simpson case, it can lead to death.
Game of Thrones, first season, the brother and sister are up in the castle, and the brother has to go and throw the kid off and to kill him. And even though it's evil, I feel kind of bad for the brother.
So welcome back to another episode of Grizzly True Crime. My name is Gisela K. If you've never seen or heard of me before, I'm South African living in the Netherlands. You might know it as Holland, with my Swiss husband, Mr. Grizzly, and our 2 cats, Fury and Willow. And on this channel, I really like to share stories that we can learn from as much as possible. These cases where we can raise awareness for domestic violence and something so scary that I took a course on called coercive control. If you've never read about that, have a read. It's very interesting, very scary, and there's lots of red flags to look out for there. And then, of course, stalking and harassment and all of these things that in this world, I just feel like there's still a lot of work to be done for the police worldwide to take it seriously and for there to be protection against victims. So what can we do? We can do our level best to protect ourselves by educating ourselves on these topics. Unfortunately, oh man, it's just so sad that this case has become an example of that, of just how very dangerous stalking and obsession can be. And as I say, this convicted and sentenced killer, Gareth Pursehouse, already started off as a stalker way back and a domestic violence aggressor. And guess what? His dad was a stalker too. His own dad stalked his fiancée to the point where she got a restraining order against him. So the apple really does not fall far from the tree. But if you've never heard of this case before and you didn't follow all the trial coverage that I did on this case, let's start from the beginning. Who was Dr. Amie Harwick? Amie Harwick was born on May 20th of 1981 in Sellerville, Pennsylvania, and she was the adopted daughter of Penny Kaufman and Tom Harwick. She grew up in Lansdale, Pennsylvania, and graduated from North Penn High School in 1999. In 2001, she moved to Los Angeles and completed her undergrad studies at California Polytechnic State University. She was beautiful inside and out and had many talents, including dancing, fire eating, writing, modeling, photography, so many talents. And she paid her own way through her master's degree and doctorate by holding a number of different jobs. She was a personal trainer, an author, a photographer, a podcaster, and eventually launched her own YouTube channel, which is still out there if you do want to see it as well, to share her wisdom with women all over the world. Her book, The New Sex Bible for Women, was published in 2014, which I see is still available on Amazon too. After receiving her Master of Arts in Clinical Psychology from Pepperdine University and her Doctorate of Human Sexuality from the Institute for Advanced Study of Human Sexuality, Dr. Amie Harwick became a well-known family and sex therapist in West Hollywood, with a network of celebrity clients and friends. Amie had started working for this non-profit organization called Pineapple Support, and they offered mental health support to people working in the adult film industry, which actually has quite a high suicide rate. This work earned Amie an invitation to a red carpet event, which was in January of 2020. This happened on January 16th of 2020, and it was called the Xbiz Awards. She was so excited to go and got all dressed up, and she wore this beautiful black dress and black heels and red lipstick, and she went with some friends as well. And while she was on the red carpet, posing for photographs, she heard this guy yelling, "You ruined my life, you bitch!" And she's like, what? So she looked around and thought, well, that voice sounds familiar. I can't imagine. Her heart must have dropped. That must have been so scary. You know that feeling where it feels like your heart drops and you just go cold from fear? And she must have looked around and thought, like, who the hell is this? And guess who it was? A photographer in the crowd. Someone working at this very same event. A man who she had dated 8 years prior, who was obsessed with her. And there he was, saying, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? You don't even like porn. What are you doing at this event? Now, many speculate that he calculated this, that he wanted to work at this event where he knew that she would be. And I would say, in my opinion, I would say that's accurate. I do think so as well. I don't think that he was just there by chance and crossed paths with her. I think he very much intended to cross paths with her that night. Now, please note that he was working at the event and 42 years old. But his obsession took over, and he couldn't even handle standing there in front of Amie, and he was shaking and fell to the floor and went into fetal position and wailed and whined like a baby boy. Like this guy was on the floor in fetal position, crying and reciting text messages from almost a decade before, which Amie's friends were very concerned about. They were like, what in the hell? And they put two and two together and thought, this is obviously the guy that she's told us about. The scary ex from way back when. The DV aggressor dude. But that's not quite what one would imagine, right? It's like this guy who's 42 years old and on the floor and crying and like, please don't leave me type of thing. Like, what the hell was this? And he obviously had no respect for the work that he was doing. So, of course, Dr. Amie Harwick, being a therapist, went into therapy mode. And she thought, it's okay. I know how to diffuse the situation. I know how to remain calm myself and how to talk to him. And I guess any patient like this to just calm down. So she sat with Gareth Pursehouse, her boyfriend from 8 years ago, the one that she had filed 2 restraining orders against in the past, the one that she had documented her abuse over, right? She had photos on it. We see that so often in DV cases, people documenting and photographing their abuse so they can show it to the police as evidence of what's really happening behind closed doors. So she sat with Gareth and she listened to what he had to say. And for 45 minutes, this guy went on and on and on with no regard for his work, for her evening, for her friends who were now just onlookers and being like, what the hell is this? Eventually, one of her male friends actually intervened and said, look, we need to get going now. And he took Amie to a diner and they talked about what happened and discussed a plan going forward. Because Amie was so unsettled, so scared, because she knew how dangerous this man was. And while she was there showing him kindness, understanding, empathy, hearing him out, she was already in her mind formulating, how am I going to protect myself? What am I going to do? So she told her male friend this. And he said, you need pepper spray. We're going to track your location from now on. You're going to let us know when you get home safely. You're going to get security cameras installed. You're going to change your locks. And she was doing all those things. Remember, this was at the end of January of 2020. And just 1 month or so later, it was just less than a month, she was murdered by that very man, that guy, Gareth Pursehouse. Let me read you the final text that she actually sent to him after this event. And by the way, this startled her so much that she actually emailed herself. She documented this on Gmail, writing down how she bumped into Gareth Pursehouse and what a fright it gave her and how his behavior was, and that she was very concerned about him and that he was highly manipulative and that she was worried for her safety. She even started telling her parents that if something happened to her and her friends, that it was him. She started talking about how she wanted her funeral to be. So just in case something happens to me, in case I'm murdered, in case anything bad happens from this moment on, this is how I want my funeral to be. I want an open casket and I want this and this and this. She was talking like that to her family and friends, which they were very worried about, which is also why they got on board to help her. Don't worry, you're going to stay safe. You have an entire network of support. You're so loved. You're so protected. You're successful. You're beautiful. It's okay. Don't worry. Oh man, but that gut instinct was spot on. Gareth Pursehouse was exceptionally dangerous. And he was never going to let her go. It really is that cliche of if I can't have you, no one else will type of thing. That's the vibe we're getting from this. Anyway, so Amie sent this final text message to him after that night and said, I think it was really good that we were able to speak last night. I'm sure there's a lot more that you want to process and say to me, but I think that was a lot for both of us. I hope you were able to hear me last night when I said that I was sorry for anything that caused you suffering and that I forgive you for the things that you did to me, because he was an abuser and he's violated her boundaries at every turn. She said, I think right now it's best to have some space, and I don't mean that in a negative way. The past is sad and triggering for both of us. I think we ended our talk last night well. We can be civil from a distance. respect each other, and move forward with our own lives. Of course, Gareth replied, and he said, so you're just still gone? Which is exactly my nightmare, and sadly what I expected. It feels the same as when I wrote you that long list of what I would miss about you and heard nothing back. Just reaching out into the darkness, trying to stop falling. I wish I could do something more, but reaching out to you is a crippling action that I had actually contemplated several times over the past few months. Just to say to you the word help. Admitting to you how hurt I am is so embarrassing and painful, which demolishes me even more because it used to be I told you every detail about myself no matter what. And of course, do you think he stopped there? Do you think that was his only text? No. What followed were more texts, and then a crying, whiny, freaking voicemail that we got to hear at the trial. If you want to hear that, it's timestamped for you in the playlist for this case. I don't want to play it again. It's truly terrible. So he also texted, I don't know how busy you are, and it truly scares me so much more than I can possibly convey to say this. Please don't just vanish on me. Please, please don't let me go through that again. Even when I was laying in bed last night, I put on Star Trek, and the first episode was Will Riker or Riker. I don't watch Star Trek, you guys. I'm sorry if I'm botching that if you're a Star Trek fan. Will Riker and Deanna Troi, the therapist, going through a bizarrely similar situation. I assume Marcy used her psychic powers for that. And in that voicemail, by the way, he said, I have so much I need to say. Please give me a chance to say it. No. You see, what we learned from this case, because I think I would have reacted very similarly to Dr. Amie Harwick, and I think many of us would. Especially if you come from a background where you have experienced trauma at any age, whichever age it was, right? Or if you're not so great at boundary setting, and I think Dr. Amie Harwick was really great at boundary setting. She'd learned all the skills. But she had such a kind heart. And she wanted to make sure that she let him down easy. I have learned that that is very dangerous. Do not let them down easy. We are so afraid of telling them to, and please excuse me, guys, okay, if you're not used to me doing this, but we are so used to not being like, F off, get away from me. I'm calling the police, and then dial the police immediately, okay? Report that person, file another restraining order. We need to learn, especially as women. I know men go through things too, okay? But especially as women, we need to learn that it's actually okay. It's not too radical or too crazy or psycho to take those steps to keep ourselves safe. Rather safe than sorry, that's an understatement. I find that I have learned over the years to be hyper vigilant, and I don't mean paranoid. I mean know the risks, assess the risks, and know, okay, yeah, no, I need to take action. So number one, do not give a person like this not even a droplet of attention. No empathy, no droplets, immediately. Example, at this event, call security, call the bodyguard, say, this guy, I've had a restraining order against him twice, he needs to be removed. Or, if he's not going to be removed, let's see what happens, right? What does the bodyguard do? Oh, he's not being removed. I'm getting in my car and I'm leaving. It doesn't matter how fun the night was going to be and that he ruined your night or whatever, right? We're learning from these cases, not victim blaming. Don't mistake it. Get in the car, say to your friend, look, this is the guy that I told you about. We need to get out of here. Get out of there. Change the lock. She did all those things at the house. Yes, pepper spray and all that. Go to the police station immediately. Protective order, restraining order, whatever it is. And those don't always help either. I know what people are going to say that have been through this. That doesn't help. It's just paperwork. I get it. But do all those things in any case. Depending on which country you are, arm yourself. Be hyper alert always. Expect the unexpected. You know, it's so sad and so scary. But you must do everything in your power to fight for your life for your future to keep yourself safe. And I'm just saying to you, there's nothing too radical or crazy when it is about protecting yourself. Your gut instinct will tell you something is way off. This person is super dangerous. And I believe that Amie could feel it. You could even see it on her social media posts. She was starting to post all about boundaries and, enforcing those and telling people, look, just leave me alone and move on and all of this. She could feel it. This guy was so freaking dangerous. Okay, so back to the story. Let's go back to 2012 just so that you can understand how really terrible this freaking Gareth Pursehouse was. In 2012, right, after they'd just broken up, this guy broke into a house multiple times. He smashed her picture frames. He wiped her laptop. He cloned her Gmail account and called it Whore Phone. Nice. So he's like, he loves her. He just broke in. He wanted to talk to her because he loves her so much. No. He doesn't know love. Nope. Anyway, so he cloned her Gmail account. He tried to hack into her social media accounts. He gave her bad reviews online for her therapy. He sent nudes into one of her employers, which actually, I believe, got her fired. She had to open her own practice after that. So he tried everything to sabotage her success, and she just powered on, powered through, and made a success of her life. And she had a happy, healthy life with wonderful friends and family, and this freaking loser just wouldn't stop. So anyway, he also, when he broke into a house in 2012, one of the times taped 4 dozen roses to her door. Okay, that's really weird. It's very creepy stuff. And then the one time, he'd also broken into her complex and was playing music in the courtyard. And see, this is where I can get snarky now based on what I know, okay, about romantic movies. Because I feel like that also sets people up for failure. Because a lot of these romantic movies, the guy is almost encouraged to chase until the girl says yes. That really shouldn't be the case. No is really no, not interested. When it's this guy and he's just like, what a gesture. He's playing music for you outside the window and you just get back together with him. No, none of that. But that's what Gareth Pursehouse did. And as I say, like father, like son, I think he learned all this crap from his dad as well. Maybe his dad even encouraged him. Who knows? That's a whole nother story. The dad's also got criminal records and restraining orders and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, and so, moving on. The police made a record of all this behavior. We have gone over the records before of what Amie Pursehouse had documented with the police. Her injuries, exactly what he had done to her, all of that. So if you missed that, it is on the playlist, which is linked in the description box for you. So she filed those 2 restraining orders. The one expired on April 11th of 2015. And while Amie thought about filing another one, she started a new life. And she felt she successfully moved on from this guy. She didn't know at the time that the nudes that were sent to her employer were him. She had a hunch it was him. She thought it could be him. She didn't know that the bad reviews on her books and her practice were from him. But in hindsight, it makes sense that it was him. So, in 2017, at a summer party, Amie actually met Drew Carey, which you might know from The Price is Right. He is a famous comedian. And that's important to note. You'll see why in a moment. Anyway, the pair got engaged at Disneyland in 2018. They later actually broke off the engagement and amicably split up. And then they remained friends. And Amie actually reached out to him, to Drew Carey, 2 days before she was murdered, saying she wants to meet up again and just chat with him and she misses him. And he was so excited and he never got to see her again. So here's why it's important to note that Amie's engagement to Drew Carey, the comedian, why is it important? Because from that moment on, Gareth Pursehouse decided he was a comedian. And he still thinks he's one. When he was sentenced to life without parole, he said to his little buddies that called him in jail that he's looking forward to try out some of his new jokes on the inmates. the other lifers, the other LWOP dudes. And to that we say, yeah, try it out. I don't think it's going to go the way that he thinks it's going to go. His jokes have literally never been funny.
Here he is, one more time for Gareth, everybody. Come on.
Hello, everybody. All right, let me spin around this. There we go. Well, thank you very much. It's great to be here in all of the best parts of entertainment. We've got most of a band. We've got morning radio sound effects, sometimes a full band when a toy kazoo comes from the ground, raises from the grave, takes over Tony and starts singing. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful time. I think he froze. So back to popular. But what about the porn talent? What happens with them? Is it just Red Band at home singing, "She was so underappreciated in her time"?
All right. There you go, Gareth. You did it. Doing the age-old broken method of trying to roast the people that the audience is here to see. That's good. How do you feel, Gareth? Shaky?
Yeah.
Is this your first time on a stage?
On a real stage, yeah.
Yeah. What other kind of stage have you
Like
been
when
on?
there's like 5 comedians. That
I wish it was stage 4.
So we go forward again to February 14th of 2020, where Dr. Amie Harwick was in Hollywood Hills at her beautiful home, spending time with some of her girlfriends. They went on an afternoon walk. They got all dressed up. They went to this burlesque show. So it's kind of like Valentine's, which normally is on February 13th, but you know what I mean? It's like gals going out for Valentine's Day. And so it's a whole group of girlfriends going out and having fun, which is also quite something to think that Gareth Pursehouse is like all festering and jealous and creepy and weird, hiding in her bedroom. She didn't even go out with a guy that night. You know what I mean? She just went out with friends to a burlesque show. And then afterwards, they went and sipped tea, and then they went to a bar, and then she headed home. And that was it. That was her last day alive on Earth. Her friends still cannot believe it. Her friends are absolutely devastated, broken about her loss. She really was a bright, bright light. You know, you get those people in life that are just so special. They are such a bright light in every room that they enter, that they will never be forgotten. So, anyway, so she had texted her friend from her driveway at 1:02 a.m. saying, "Send me the photo of us on the green couch." There were lots of selfies taken and things like that. And so right after that, Amie got out of her car, closed the door, and entered her home. Marched up her stairs, excited to see her cat. She absolutely loved her cat. And when she got to her bedroom, there was Gareth Pursehouse. I cannot imagine what he must have looked like. How crazy. But he immediately attacked her. There were signs, you know, that she had fought back. As I say, she had his DNA under her nails. There were marks all over her body. It seemed like she had been kicked. She'd been strangled. And then she'd been thrown off of her balcony. And then this coward left that home and climbed over a wall and ran away, drove away. And while he was driving away, texted a lady that he'd met on a dating app and said, "Morning, sunshine, what are you up to?" And when she was asking, "Well, why didn't you see me for Valentine's Day? What were you doing?" He said, I told you I was going to be busy all week. Lots of errands to run." Errands? Oh, errands to run and murder. Ridiculous. So he actually met up with that woman. I feel so sorry for her. She had to take the stand during the trial. He met up with her that very same day, and she noticed he had a black eye and some scratches on his face, and she was like, "What the hell is that?" And he made up some story, deflected, as they do, of course. And they had a semi-great day together. You know, she was coming up with things for them to do. Let's go to the beach. Let's do this. Let's do that. She was so excited to see her man. But then, woo! And they were the police. And Gareth Pursehouse was arrested. Now, guess what? He was arrested and held on a $2 million bond, which he bailed out on. Because, of course, I think he has to pay like 10% of that. And he was pretty wealthy. He was a software engineer and part-time photographer and comedian. Anyway, and so he was actually bailed out, which I don't know if that was from his mom or his dad or his brother or his own money. I have no idea, but he actually bonded out. And then a few days later, after more tests were done, and Amy's autopsy and DNA test, it was confirmed that his DNA was on the freaking door handle, and he was seen on the ring cam footage literally walking up to it, putting his hand over it, trying to deactivate it. And so they had lots of DNA evidence against him. And so he was arrested again, held on no bond, and charged with Dr. Amie Harwick's murder. On April 16th of 2020, he pleaded not guilty to her murder. His trial started on August 29th of 2023, and there was 11 days of trial before the state and the defense had rested their case. The jury deliberated for almost 2 days, and they came back with a unanimous guilty verdict. And so we also got to see Gareth Pursehouse in the courtroom. Yeah, he packed on a lot of weight. He didn't look anything like he did before, which could be for a multitude of reasons, and we are not here to fat shame ever on this channel. But when it comes to a killer, here and there we can be like, damn, what a glow down. Look at that. Look at him now. And yet he was giving his friends fitness advice on jail calls and saying, so I'm officially a bad boy now, aren't I? Like, this guy was still joking about everything on jail calls to his friends while awaiting trial. After the jury came back with a guilty verdict, this guy's sentencing was set for December 6th of 2023, which none of us who follow the trial here at Grizzly True Crime could wait for. And there we were on that day watching that sentencing, and guess what? He was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. But of course, this guy thinks he's a big deal. He even said to his friends, I'm a big deal now. If any book publishers want to approach me, $1 million would be good for my brother. Yeah, no, he doesn't seem to have any remorse whatsoever. And he had almost no expressions throughout the trial. So that was quite odd to see, and also not during his sentencing. Now, Dr. Amie Harwick was just 38 years old when she died. And she is loved and missed by so many wonderful, kind, loving people who gave powerful victim impact statements right before Gareth Pursehouse was sentenced. I think her friend Sarah Rowland said it best. She took the witness stand on one of the days of the trial, and she said, I hope that she is portrayed as the woman that she is, and not the victim who was naive. See, Amie wasn't naive. She knew how dangerous Gareth Pursehouse was. She had experienced his violence in a relationship with him and had successfully gotten away from him. As we know from all these cases we study, in domestic violence situations, oftentimes it would be 7 attempts to leave before one successfully leaves. And what makes it not successful in leaving? Normally murder. That's what's scary. That's the other side of that sentence. It's not that, after 7 times, they give up and they stay with this violent abuser. The abuse always escalates. It never de-escalates, especially at the point of which the aggressor is strangling or choking you. It never gets better. One must leave, but one must leave very safely, because the most dangerous time in any DV relationship is the time of leaving or separation. It must be done very carefully. There's, of course, shelters, helplines, all of those that are very helpful in these situations. But she actually successfully left him, started a whole new life, got her education, a network of friends. She was close to her family, like she did everything right. And she had that restraining order against him. It's just when it expired. In hindsight, which of course is 2020, but we're trying to learn from that 2020, right? That's the whole point. Some people say when we discuss true crime, hindsight's 2020. Yeah, and that's what we're here for. We're here for the 2020 to learn. Yeah, when that restraining order expired, get another one. Renew it. Because that guy, in this case, would never, ever, ever become less dangerous. Never. That's what we learn from this. Stalkers never stop. The obsession never dies. It's not like narcissism where they get their new supply. No, 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 no. Stalkers are very, very dangerous. There's many stalker cases which turn out to be murder cases, which is incredibly scary. So, the point is, Amie was not naive. She knew how dangerous he was. She saw his behavior there. And in order to cope with it, right, to cope with how scary he was being at this event in public, she tried to talk to him, to nurture him, to be there for him. Never. We will learn now. With hindsight of 2020, we will learn. We will honor Amie's life and we will learn. Don't do that. Empathy in a box? No. No communication. Call for help. Call the police. Call a bodyguard. Take action. Get that restraining order. Change all the locks. Get those security cameras. Move house. Move state if you need to. It all sounds crazy. Crazy. They like to say that women are so crazy when they're just trying to protect themselves. Do whatever it takes. Move. Do something. You know, you have to, because these people are so dangerous and they never stop. It's terrible. Just remember, I'm quoting now from Laura Richards. Her channel is called Crime Analyst, and you can see her website, thelaurarichards.com. I did a course with her, which is university accredited, and it's on stalking, domestic violence, and coercive control. And it really opened my eyes to so much. And she always reminds us, a relationship isn't toxic. A person is toxic. It's the abuser that's toxic. So it's not like a toxic relationship. Identify what is toxic, the abuser. Take action for that, but safely, okay? Very, very safely. You cannot just run. And oftentimes people have children with these abusers or they're dependent on them, which is just so sad. Now, before I end this episode, please remember to share the domestic violence distress signal, which has now become a general distress signal, although it was created as a domestic violence distress signal. And it goes like this. Okay, share it with everyone you know. Teens, kids, adults, whoever. Okay, share it with them, because if you see someone just quickly doing this in a store, at a cafe, at a restaurant, at a bar, wherever, in public, in a car, that means they're in distress. Their life is at risk. It's up to you to call the police, okay? At least call the manager, then hopefully they'll call the police. Do not intervene. Your life could be at risk, which is again why I do not understand why people want to shame the roommate who scaled a wall and hurt himself in the process of trying to get help. He knew how dangerous it was. You don't intervene. Your life is very much at risk if you intervene in a DV situation. And he knew about this ex-boyfriend, and in his sleep fog thought, oh my word, he went into survival mode. I think he did the right thing. Scale the wall. He went. I don't know where his phone was. That's not for us to nitpick. Although, if we want to do hindsight's 2020, yeah, grab your phone, have it with you, have it close to you, call 911 immediately, right? Anyway, but he went to get help. He called 911. The police were there. And, it was just too late. This guy threw Amie off her own balcony. Sure. So I hope that you've learned something from this case, especially if you've never heard of it before. Please like and share hashtag DV awareness, hashtag stalking. Okay? You could share hashtag Dr. Amie Harwick. And let's never forget how beautiful, smart, talented she was. Let's always honor her memory and send lots of love to her family and friends. I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe.